Well, I'm in the greenhouse today. I'm just filming my sowing and growing video for February, and I'm just going to do some pricking out because we just got finished. And yeah, so I've got quite a few things to prick out. I've got all this parsley, celery, maybe not the peppermint, and lots of lettuces. I thought I'd just show you all the sophisticated tools and techniques that I use. Right, so these are the trays that I use. These are containerised trays. I really like these. They've got these really lovely big holes at the bottom, and that makes it really easy to push them out. They've got ribs inside, and the ribs reduce the amount of tangling up and sort of twisting round of the roots that you get. They encourage the roots just to go vertically down to the bottom where they air prune, and so you get a much healthier root system, and they fit obviously really nicely in my standard drip trays. And for smaller quantities I use these trays which are also from containerised. They're exactly the same size as the bigger tray, but they're just in a strip of 10, and yeah, they're really nice. You can get them in 20s as well, or you can just chop these in half with a saw, which I often do as well, although that does have some downsides, so bear that in mind. So yeah, and I prick out with an old bradawl or an old screwdriver, whatever I find in the workshop to hand, so there's nothing fancy about that. And I just make the holes in the compost with this Sharpie pen. So that's all the sophisticated tools and technologies that I'm using, and I have prepared in advance all my trays so I can get on with this pretty quickly, and maybe we'll zoom in a few seconds as well. So first off, I just want to show you this tray, and this has got the celery in it, and I did promise when I did the original sowing video that we'd come back and look at this. So we've got two batches that I did here. One was sown on the surface, which is the kind of recommended way to sow celery. I don't like doing it like that. I like sowing it about 2 millimeters below the level of the compost. So basically put the seed on the surface, then sprinkle a fine coating of 2 or 3 millimeters of compost on top, and just look at the difference. So these are the ones that were sown on the surface, and these are the ones that were sown 2-3 millimeters deep in the compost, and much healthier. Almost every single one came up. None of them sort of fell over or just failed to thrive like they did with the others. The parsley was, all of the parsley was sown sort of 2 or 3 millimeters deep, and the peppermint, I think the jury's sort of out on that. The peppermint that was sown 2 or 3 millimeters deep under, again, compost, that has just broken surface, whereas the peppermint that was sown on the surface, that did seem to germinate reasonably well, but those plants are just, I don't know, 2 or 3 days older sort of thing. So no real difference between them apart from the time to break surface. So what am I going to do with these? I'm going to sow them into these 10 cell trays, and yeah, let's get a bit of a close up. So the peppermint's too small probably to prick out, although I might try. Right, so I just basically make some holes. Do you really need a video to show somebody making holes? But anyway, that's the way I do it. And let's just break up, then loosen off the compost a little bit. And this is the Victoria celery, and it's my first early to go in the greenhouse. Nice little root system actually on there, and I'm just going to drop that in there and just sort of try and get all the roots in. And you can bury the stems on this, like almost everything when it's young you can bury the stems on quite happily. And there's a lot of people saying that when you bury the stems it can rot and all of that. I've never had a stem rot on anything, I don't think, that I've ever planted deep, and as I say, I always plant deep like that. And I've got way too much celery here, but you know, because this is the first early crop, you don't need very much, and it's just going to be used as harvested rather, as a cut and come again crop, primarily for salads. And it'll go in the greenhouse initially. It'll go in the house initially because celery doesn't really like it below about 10 degrees centigrade or thereabouts, especially when it's young like this. So I put it in the house initially, sunny window. I haven't got very many sunny windows, so in my case it'll go under grow lights until it's ready for potting on. That'll be about a month or so's time. And at that point, when the plants are a bit bigger, they're much more tolerant of the cold, but I still try and keep them well above freezing. And so they're okay though at that point in the greenhouse, which is always kept above freezing as long as the heater doesn't stop working. And then in about April time, they're okay going into the polytunnel into the ground. And then we get a harvest towards the end of May, which is quite nice for an early crop. But, you know, that's kind of what I need, you know, like a tray of 10 or something like that. So it's much more convenient to do it in these little trays because everything takes sort of a different amount of time. I'm just going to do the same with the parsley. Again, just break this up. Maybe make some holes would be a good idea. Yeah, don't forget to put labels on. And again, I don't need a huge amount of parsley, but parsley's faster growing than celery, so that's why one of the reasons I don't like to put everything in the same seed tray. It's just much more convenient to have it in these individual little 10-cell trays, which are quite expensive, I might add. And so what you can do is you can get the 20-cell tray and cut it in half with a hacksaw, and that works fine. And that's a much cheaper way, actually, of getting a 10-cell tray and buying them already moulded like this. So I don't have any propagators, so in my case I just put them on in the conservatory, and they've germinated just fine, and just you have to keep the seedlings moist basically, and I just use a spray for that. I'm actually going to try and get some of these peppermints out just for the fun of it, and we'll see how they go. Oh yeah, that's come out all right. So yeah, they're really tiny. They're really tiny. But I mean, obviously it would be better to let them grow on a bit, but you know, where's the fun in that? Got it. And actually my spearmint cuttings are just starting to regrow nicely. It's not often that I start herbs from seed like this. We often just buy them. Right, so now we've got the lettuces, and got 9 different varieties here. So some of them are a bit leggy, so the canasta's a bit leggy, the maureen's a little bit leggy, fleshy butter oat, whatever. But yeah, they're all going to be fine. There's slightly different techniques that you have to have when they're getting a little bit too leggy. Anyway, same story, just make some holes with your trusty pen. could use your finger, of course. Sometimes I use my finger, depends how I'm feeling. So I'll just talk about the compost. So I'm just using Erin Excel, I think, multi-purpose. It's in the green bag, and yeah, that is perfectly good for pricking out into. It's really rough. It's got great big chunks of wood and fibre in it and things like that. If the wood's really big, I will just take it out as I'm sort of filling the module trays. But generally speaking, like little bits of wood like this, I'm not bothered about that. I'll leave that in. And yeah, I mean, as I say, I've not had any problems really with growing the seedlings in this cheap multi-purpose. It's just the cheapest. I think it's like 3 for £15 or something like that from the garden centre. For the celery, I just used my seed starting compost just because, and for the peppermint and the parsley, I just used the seed starting compost just because it was, they're tiny little seedlings basically. So I just use the finer compost for those. But these lettuces are fine, they're nice and big. So let's get close up again. So I'm going to start with the canasta, which are these really leggy ones here. So that is not ideal. I'm just going to probably, I don't know, maybe I'll do 15, something like that. So let's see what we can do with these. So again, just loosen them off. Actually, that is not going to be too bad. I think I'm going to be able to get that in. Yeah, fine. Sometimes when they're a little bit longer than this, I do bend the stems over, and I'll kind of show you kind of how I would do that, even though it's probably not strictly necessary with this. So if I got something that long, I would put it in on its side like that, and then just gently push it in, and that works quite well. So yeah, let's go through these. I really like Canasta. It's one of my favourite summer lettuces, but in my low tunnels and cold frames and the polytunnel, it's essentially summer when these get planted out. So it's maybe early summer, but it kind of feels like summer. So these are going to get planted out. Let's see, they were sown 21st of January, so they're probably going to get planted out about 4 weeks after that, so about the 20th of February or thereabouts. 20th of February, 10 hours of daylight, so that's enough for a lettuce to thrive. And they're pretty hardy lettuce, so they don't really mind too much being cold at night. But by the end of February, early March, it's getting really nice in a polytunnel or a low tunnel. Probably seeing typical daytime temperatures are sort of 15, 20 degrees, can be a bit warmer than that as well, under plastic. So these are going to thrive, even these summer lettuces, and as I say, it's one of my favourites, so I just make an exception for it. Normally I would not do a summer lettuce at this time of year, but yeah, Canasta is worth the extra, slight amount of risk. It's not very much risk, but a little bit of risk. So there we go, just had just enough. I don't need this number, but it's like a few pence worth of compost, so for me it's just worth it. Now these are the Lolla Rossa, aren't they so much nicer? So those are much more compact little plants, and so they're no problem at all getting those in. And I plant really deep, as deep as I can possibly get them. So you've got all that stem there, loads of stem, and all that buried. And there's just, you can't overdo it, basically. I don't think. You just go as deep as you possibly can, just above the growing tip. You obviously don't want to bury the growing. Oops. You don't want to bury the growing tip, but other than that, they're okay. And then I'll water these in just with a little bottle top waterer, and I'll show you that in a minute. Being reasonably careful with these leaves, don't want to crush them, but honestly, again, I'm not the most careful when it comes to these sorts of jobs, and I've never lost not a single lettuce, so I don't really think you can be that rough with them, as long as you're just taking reasonable precautions. Anyway, Riccia is a lovely lettuce. So it's a green sort of low type. Has a really nice leaf texture to it. It's one of my favourite ones to eat. It's really mild, probably not, that nutritious given that it's all green. But unlike Canasta, which has a sort of nice bronzy sort of tinge to the leaves, with lettuce, it's really a good idea to get as much colour as you can in your salad mixes. But, there's kind of getting nutrition and enjoying your food. And for me, a lot of the green lettuces are just got such lovely leaf texture. They're so mild. It really would be a bit of a shame to deprive yourself of green lettuces and only eat dark red lettuces, for example, which can be a bit bitter. So I think it's just really nice to have a mix. And lettuce is a really important crop to us. We, by the time we're sort of harvesting these, I should think we'll be feeding about 12 people, maybe 14 people, and making up, well, I have seven boxes of lettuce a week. Debbie has 3, so that's 10. Jenny has 4, so that's 14. And then we generally give a few away as well. So we sort of end up with maybe 20 boxes of lettuce, and each one's 2 litres, so sort of 40 litres of lettuce a week. So it's a pretty important crop. So next one is half flex, and this is a Salanova type. They're expensive, the seeds for Salanovas, and unless you're kind of a real connoisseur of lettuces like I am, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. But it's a lovely leaf. It's sort of like a long, thin, sort of, I don't know what it's called, like it's probably got like 100 stems to it, and each stem's probably got like 5 or 6 leaves or something like that. It's just really novel, and crispy, and nice, lots of really nice colour, like a fairly dark red, but not bitter at all. It's just really interesting. I did a really bad job of describing that, didn't I? And then Blastex is a similar sort. So I'm only doing like 5 each of these because I tend to use these more like a garnish almost, sort of like a sprinkles on top sort of thing in the salad mixes. I might give myself a little bit of extra of them because I like them so much. But 90% of the salad mixes that we make are relatively cheap lettuces, or very cheap lettuces often from Seeds of Italy, for example. So those cheap ones sort of are the mainstay of the mix, and then just say a few sprinkles on top. And when we're doing salads, especially in spring, there's a lot of things in our salad mixes other than lettuces. So I tend to have a lot of spinach, probably 2 different varieties of spinach, lots of Asian greens, maybe 3 different varieties of Asian greens. I've got some Asian greens just there as well, actually. So I've got some red stem pak choi, and some tatsoi. I like to multi-sow the red stem pak choi as we're going into spring, so we get a lot of small leaves, because it's much nicer to have small leaves in the salad mixes. Yeah, it's just really nice. And then when we get into summer, and probably some salad rocket and things as well. And then in summer, maybe some wild rocket, and definitely some golden purslane, in addition to the lettuces. But yeah, just you can really do a lot with salad leaves. Oh, and don't forget all the baby beetroot leaves. I actually prefer baby beetroot leaves to baby chard leaves. Yeah, so we sow quite a lot of those specifically for that purpose, as well as kale leaves like red rhubarb and things like that. Very healthy salads. And then I've got the Lola Rossa, and that's really lovely as well. So that's quite like Riccia. It's obviously a Lolo type, but red instead of green. Not quite as nice a leaf texture as the Riccia, but still, very respectable, very prolific, and does well in spring. And it's very cheap. We get our Lola Rossa from Seeds of Italy, so you get 1 packet with like thousands of seeds in it, and they tend to last pretty well as well. I think these are 3-year-old seeds, and they're still doing really nicely, and they're super easy to prick out, these nice short stems on them. And then we're on to Novara. So Novara is probably my favourite of all of the spring summer lettuces. It's a beautiful red leaved lettuce with kind of a tinge of green on the inner leaves. So you've got all that sort of healthiness of a red lettuce leaf, but with a beautiful crisp rib, and quite a succulent thick leaf, and it's mild, mild tasting. So you kind of get in, well, for me it's like perfection in a lettuce, really. But the only thing is, that there is a risk with it. It is susceptible, I find, to downy mildew on the leaf, which is not a problem in late spring, and it's not a problem in summer, but it can be a problem in autumn, and it can be a problem in early spring. And obviously these will be planted out in early spring, in late winter. So it's a risk, but it's such a good lettuce, it's worth taking the risk. And if you did get downy mildew, then you'd basically just take off all the affected leaves, and there's a pretty good chance, well, I would say probably a very good chance, that the plants will pull through and you'll just get a perfect harvest, because downy mildew tends to be one of those diseases that only strikes in very specific circumstances, and so it'll only sort of affect leaves at a particular time, and so after that point, all the other leaf growth will be fine. And it also tends to affect only leaves of a particular age. So young leaves will be fine, but older leaves will get the mildew. So what you end up doing is you take off the older leaves, leave the younger leaves, and all is good. So now I'm just doing Maureen. So Maureen is just a little gem variety, very traditional little gem. And again, you're just growing this, obviously not for the nutrition. There's not much nutrition in a little gem. You're getting it for the leaf quality, you know, that and the nice crunchy rib. And just makes so it's really adding texture to the salad rather than adding nutritional value. So we don't grow a huge number of these, but it's nice to have a few. And then we've got flashy butter oak, flashy lightning butter oak. So in previous years, I've grown quite a bit of flashy butter oak and liked it. But it's a fairly big, unruly lettuce, I would say. Whereas flashy lightning butter oak is a much more compact plant. And I absolutely love it. So it's quite different to Navara and Canasta, my other sort of two favourites I've just been describing. What I really love about flashy lightning butter oak is that it's got quite a lot of nice leaf colour. It's got these sort of green leaves with kind of bronzy flecks in them. And of course that bronzy fleck adds a lot of nutrition, phytochemicals, but it's got such a buttery sort of texture to it. It's lovely and mild. Yeah, it's a lovely, really lovely lettuce. Highly recommended. And you can see where I get all my seeds from in all of my sort of growing databases, or just subscribe to my newsletter at steverichards.substack.com, and you'll find all those details in there as well. But I think I get those from Vital Seeds. I quite like Vital Seeds, actually. It has a really good range. So that's the flashy lightning butter oak, and I've just got these leggy Grenoble Reds left over, so I'm just going to find somewhere to sow those. I really want a 10 cell tray to do that. Right, so we'll just do a quick water, and I try and just like water around the plants, and I'm not watering them very much because they're tiny little plants with tiny little roots. They can't take up very much moisture, so they don't want much moisture in the compost. They want just enough to settle them in, and then just keep on watering them every few days, little and often. Definitely don't like bottom water them and thoroughly saturate the compost. That is how you get damping off, basically. So yeah, just a little bit like this, and then definitely don't kind of put them under grow lights or anything at this point. Just put them somewhere for 12, 14 hours or 24 hours, whatever, with a little bit of light, just a windowsill somewhere. And if you do put them under grow lights like I will for another maybe 10 days or something like that, just start them off at a sort of 50% level, and then the next day sort of turn them up to 100%, just so they get sort of settled in, the roots get established and things like that before you put them under the pressure of all that heat and light. And then we're done. My name's Steve. This is the Seaside Kitchen Garden and Allotment channel. I'll see you soon.